Welcome, everyone. My name is Naomi Blamire. I am the managing partner at BL Consulting, and it is an honor and a privilege for us to host our Haitian American Town Hall tonight. We are living in a time that requires our attention, that requires our voice, and that requires for us to stand in solidarity. Tonight, we want to discuss how we feel about what's going on in our nation, the possible solutions that we can together put together in order for us never to see what we are seeing again. Again, it is an honor and a privilege for me to welcome you tonight and to welcome our host. Pour tout Haïtien Américain qui branché, non moi c'est Naomi Blemure et moi vle dire bienvenue to the Haitian American Community Town Hall. Dans moment ça, nous allons introduire host nous qui pral aider nous manage forum ça et nous souhaiter que tant ça que vous allez passer avec nous ou à quitter pas not necessarily with all the answers, mais on va quitter avec un peu de réponse. First and foremost, nous connaissons que moment ça demande leadership, demande leadership qui bold, leadership qui présent et leadership qui a pensé pour nous-mêmes. We all know that this time it is asking for leadership that is bold, leadership that is present, and leadership that is thinking for us. Before we even begin the forum, I would like to thank Marie Woodson for her vision for this town hall. And at this time, I would like to present her to you. Candidate Mary Woodson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. But before I go ahead and even introduce myself, I would like to ask us to observe a moment of silence in memories of George Floyd and his family and all those who have passed prior to his death. So please let's observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Marie Woodson, and I'm a candidate running for State House District 101. But tonight is not about me being a candidate. It's not about any one of us on the panel being a candidate or mayor of a city or commissioner. It's all about us coming together to have a candid conversation about what's going on in our community, what's going on with our people. And when I'm referring to people, I'm referring to all of us, because sometimes we say it because we are from different places on the planet. We feel like, okay, I'm not African-American, I'm Haitian, I'm Jamaican, I'm this, I'm that. But guess what? We all are people. We all are Black. We all come from the motherland, and they drop some of us over here, some of us over there, some of us in different places. But guess what? We are in this together. Together, because when we get stopped by a police officer or whatever the case might have been, they don't ask you where you're from. They don't ask you, where are you from Haiti? Are you from Jamaica? Are you American, African American? Guess what? We all are living on this land, and we are grateful actually for those who came before us, who have paved the way for us to be where we are today. And we are in this together. So this is why I felt like it was fitting for us as candidates, as elected officials, as people who have leadership roles, to come together and have this forum for us to have that discussion. So I thank every single one of you for being here. And I thank Naomi Blemure when I call on her and say, hey, Naomi, I need to put this together. As a candidate, you know, we have no time to ourselves. So it was great that she was able to put the forum together for us and her entire team, and as well Ronald Surin, who is an attorney, Anthony Bonami, for volunteering their time to be part of this. So thank you so much. I hope we all can have a great conversation and come up with some solution as Haitian American leaders as well, and all the other groups who are involved. So thank you so much, Naomi. It's all yours.
Welcome back. Guys, listen, as I stated before, we are dealing with a crisis, a national crisis. And as Haitian Americans, we know that our voices may not necessarily be heard. So tonight is your night. This is an opportunity for you to hear from those that are candidates, as well as our African American leaders who are in position right now, who can tell us what it is that they look to put in place in order for us to see a better tomorrow. Again, my name is Naomi Blamire. I am an accountant in the city of North Miami. The name of my firm is BL Consulting. We provide accounting and tax solutions for individuals and businesses, as well as marketing strategies for public figures. Pour tout le monde qui branche, nous disons merci. Assoya, c'est pour vous. C'est temps ou pour tendre pour nous tendre ou pour nous tendre qui j'en senti ou. Dans moment ça, et pour candidat yo parler avec nous, et pour monde qui déjà est élu dans l'autre communauté africaine-américaine pour yo parler avec nous tout à soya. Si vous avez une question sur Facebook, nous demandons que nous ouvrir plateforme Q&A ou va mettre question et nous va répondre question. Pour tout le monde qui a regardé, nous avons 9 candidats qui sont là avec nous à soya et nous avons 4 elected officials qui sont parmi la communauté africaine-américaine qui sont là avec nous. For the hosts, tonight I will be one of your hosts. You will also have Anthony Bonami, who is the founder of AB Consulting Solutions with over 10 years of experience in government affairs. He has knowledge in various phases of municipal business tax, risk management, real estate, municipal budget, local, state, and national political campaigns, and grassroots organizing. He's a former administrative assistant for Miami-Dade County School Board, the 4th largest school district in the United States, and former chief of staff for the city of Miramar, a city with 140,000 residents, 1,000 employees, and an operating budget of $256 million. Monsieur Bonami, please say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Our second co-host for tonight is Sandra Saint-Hilaire. Sandra is a political consultant and a campaign treasurer, providing services to candidates and committees in local, state, and federal elections in South Florida. She manages finances, campaign finance reporting, ensures compliance with campaign finance laws, provides guidance and assistance in making financial decisions for the campaign, and assists clients in developing fundraising strategies. Sandra, please say hello.
Hi everyone, bonsoir tout le monde.
Last but not least, we have Mr. Ronald Surin, a lawyer during the day, a political actor in the evening, a minister of the gospel on weekends, but a servant of the Lord at all times. Mr. Ronald Surin, please say hello.
Hello, shalom, shalom. Bonsoir tout le monde.
Très bien. Dans le moment ça, nous voulons connaître que Assoya, ce n'est pas un forum. Assoya, ce n'est pas un débat. C'est un town hall. Nous voulons pour nous entendre qui j'en ai, qui j'en senti de ça qui a passé là, et s'il possible, pour nous porter solution qui a assuré que ça n'a pas aujourd'hui, nous parlons demain. Again, we want to thank you. We want to let you know that tonight is not a forum. Tonight is not a debate. It is a town hall. We want to hear from you. We want to hear how you're doing. And if possible, we want to provide solutions so that what we see today, we will not see tomorrow. At this time, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Ronald Surin.
Thank you, Madam Blamey, for this wonderful introduction. And we are glad to be here tonight. And again, we welcome everyone here to the Haitian-American Town Hall. It's a meeting tonight to address and discuss the death of George Floyd. As we've witnessed on May 25th, the horrific videos of the heartless killing of another Black man without justification in the hands of police officers who have sworn to protect and serve their community by the power vested in them from the people, my heart sunk one more time. This time, the world, the state, the communities proclaim that they had enough. Enough of the original sin that brought Blacks in this continent under inhuman conditions. All the outrages have broken down into street protests to get the attention of the deaf-tongue governments, institution mandated to secure our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by all humans. Since such contract has been breached, the people deem it upon themselves to make their voice, frustration, outrage, and fear heard by all. The people are angry, upset, and need answers. And tonight, we have the privilege of having 4 elected local officials as our guests and 8 Haitian-American women candidates, including a sitting judge, to address us. Let's hear the introduction to one of our co-hosts, Anthony Banami, a very powerful and experienced consultant. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Attorney Surin. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I would like to start by echoing the words of Miss Naomi and Attorney Surin on the horrific death of George Floyd. The action taken by that police officer on that day galvanized our community and brought us to this moment to share our ideas on the steps we can take as a community to move forward. I would like to welcome our 8 candidates: Senator Daphne Campbell, Florida State Senate District 35, Judge Phoebe Francois, Broward County Court Judge, Group 27, Sheila Sherfilis McCormick, United States Representative, District 20, Marie Woodson, Florida State House, District 101, Gypsy Metellus, Miami-Dade County Commission, District 3, Narnique Pierre Grant, Broward County School Board, Seat 9, Nadia Assad, Lauderhill Commission, Seat 3, and Ketley Joachim, North Miami Beach Commissioner, Group 3. And now I will take a few minutes. Actually, I would like to give our 4 distinguished guests 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We will start with Mayor Oliver Gilbert.
Good evening, everyone. This is an interesting time that we find ourselves in. You know, not just because we're experiencing what we knew existed and the world bore witness to when they saw that tape. It's the legacy of slavery, the legacy of segregation, the legacy of racism in this country. But we're not just experiencing that; we're experiencing it during a global pandemic, which makes it even more difficult. I think that this is an important forum because it's allowing us not just to talk to people, but to talk to each other. We need to find ways to actually channel our ideas, and we won't all, get it right the first time, but we need to find ways to work together to come up with the ideas that begin to transition, not the Black community, because we knew what the problem was and we got a pretty good idea about how to fix it, but how to change everything else. I've been having conversations with my friends who aren't Black, and they call me and they say, what should we be doing? I say, not just having this conversation with me and not just having it like he was one bad officer. Have the conversation like he was a part of a system that sees me a certain way. And don't just be mad right now. Be mad when you're voting and vote for people who won't allow for this system to exist. You can do that for me right now. We need to be having those type of tough conversations with the public in general and with our counterparts who are leaders across this country. I thank you all for inviting me here, and I look forward to the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gilbert. Next, can we have Mayor Wagar introduce herself? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Mayor Crystal Wagar from the Village of Miami Shores. It's an honor for me to be with all of you this evening. I can concur with Mayor Gilbert's sentiment. Look, we are in challenging times. These are unprecedented times in terms of living in the pandemic and seeing what's going on to our Black men and women across the country. All of us have known this has been happening for years, but this is a result of 400 years of an issue that has never been addressed, honestly, candidly, amongst the entire country. We have these conversations amongst ourselves, but it's time that they meaning Caucasians and others who are not of the African diaspora, to begin having these conversations with themselves in order to push forth the promise of America, which we have not to the fullest extent benefited from. So I'm honored to be here. I look forward to the conversation. You know, our Caucasian counterparts need to be having a conversation among themselves. They need to speak up amongst themselves when they're hearing disparaging things, socially things that are unjust. They need to march with us and speak out on our behalf. And I hope that what we're seeing in the world right now, and I mean the world because the world is watching, that this will be the catalyst for that. So we have some meaningful allies and some meaningful change. So thank you, and I look forward to the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Wagar. Next, Councilwoman, I apologize. Councilwoman Andrina Jackson.
Good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. And look forward to the conversation tonight. Again, I am Andrina Jackson, Commissioner from North Bay Village to the east. I'm the first Black elected official on this side of town. And a lot of my residents came to me, called me as soon as this happened and said that they wanted to do something. One of the things that we're going to do over here is hold a candlelight vigil in honor of Mr. Floyd. But I think one of the other things that we need to look at is next time, maybe inviting more of our white counterparts to these conversations because they don't know these are happening. I had a friend who asked me, and she was like, well, it seems like the Black community is silenced. And I was like, really? I was like, I just don't think it's reported because I was like, it's very busy. These are challenging times and everybody's busy. Everybody's holding press conferences. We're all holding food drives. The Black Advisory Board is very busy. I was a part of that meeting yesterday. So again, I look forward to the conversation this evening and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Andrina Jackson. The next person would be Mayor Wayne Messam, if he's still with us. Okay, well, we'll move on. We'll give Senator Daphne Campbell a minute to introduce herself.
You hear me well? Do you hear me, Anthony?
Yes, I can.
Okay, let me say good evening to everyone and thank you, Naomi, for inviting me to this panel this afternoon. This is a discussion, you know, who have a lot of heat everywhere. And I thank you and I thank Woodson, you know, for even, you know, like having that in mind to initiate this panel this afternoon. This is, you know, I'm telling you, this is very, very hard. My name is Daphne Campbell. You know, I'm a candidate for Florida Senate District 35. We're not talking about, you know, politics this afternoon, but I'm a former state representative and state senator. I'm a mother of 3 boys. This is, you know, when I heard on the story and I watched it myself, I cried like a baby for days because I said to myself, how in the world someone in a plain view like this to even, he just didn't care, have his knees kneeling on top of somebody's neck. As a registered nurse to my background, is a registered nurse by trade for over 30 years. I work in critical care. I do understand what was going on to this man's neck. And even he was calling mama, mama, big man like this. And, the man didn't care at all. So I am so, so glad and so honored and so privileged to be on the panel to discuss this, because something has to be done. I've been very sad, it's been disgusted, it's a heartbroken. And not only that, regarding the climate of the country right now, it is very cloudy, sad moments, right now. The inequality is increasing among people, and it will appear that Black lives have no value, but Black lives matters. So I'm happy again to be on the panel, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. Next, Ms. Judge Phoebe Francois. Can you introduce yourself?
Unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is a very important dialogue that we're opening up and that we're having, because it's important that we continue to be engaged and we continue to talk about some of these incidences. This terrible incident that happened on the streets of Minneapolis shouldn't have happened. So I'm glad to see that we're having this panel. I know that I can't talk about the incident itself, but I did want to be part of this call, of this Zoom call, and be part of the initiative to have a dialogue and to talk about it, because I think that we do need to be engaged. We do need to have our voices heard. We do need to let people hear that and know that we want to be involved, and we want to be part of this dialogue. And I think that people need to be involved, not only engaged in, in doing the demonstrations, but they need to know that why it's important to vote, why it's important to serve on juries who are going to decide the fate of someone like this officer. So we want to make sure that we stay engaged. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Judge Phoebe. Next, Ms. Sheila Sherphyllis McCormick. Can you introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila Sherphyllis McCormick. I am a mom, an attorney, and a healthcare executive. I'm a United States House of Representative candidate. Most importantly, what's going on right now really touches our family on all levels. I have two teenage kids, a daughter who's 17 and a son who's 16. So us meeting together as leaders to figure out how we go forward and to make sure that we are ushering in change so our kids can believe in this system and driving them to vote and be a part of the systemic change that's needed is an awesome opportunity for us today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sheila McCormick. Next, we'll go to Mayor Wayne Messam. You can take 2 minutes to introduce yourself, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having this forum. I'm Mayor Wayne Messam from the city of Miramar, Florida, Florida's 13th largest municipality and Broward County's most populated community of African Americans or individuals of African descent. It's very timely that we have this discussion as it relates to the topic of the tragedy that happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd. Our city and my heart, my family's heart goes out to his family in regards to his unnecessary murder. It's very upsetting. And my approach in terms to what this means is I have to look at my position, my power, my influence, and how I can be of change and impact within my community. And as the elected official with reach and associations with other local elected officials across this country, it's incumbent upon us to share best practices and for us to look within our own police departments, looking at our own policies. And I'm a person who just recently accepted President Obama's challenge for mayors to take the pledge to review our use of force policies and to make the necessary reforms where needed. And I'm extending that challenge to my colleagues across the country as well. because we sit in these positions and we are in the position to help the community. When the community cries, we are in the position to actually impose and to impact change, because we are directly associated with the creation, adoption, ratification, and vacancy of policy. And that's what I think elected officials should be in a position to do, to own that responsibility, to know that the buck stops with us. And when we are in these positions, we must serve our community and change the necessary policies that allow individuals like the bad cops to get away with these types of unfortunate incidents.
Thank you so much, Mayor Messam. Next, we will have Miss Gypsy Metellus. Take a few minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all. Thank you each one for participating in, I think, this very important forum this evening. Thank you, Marie Woodson, for your vision. Thank you, Naomi Blemure, for always stepping up and doing what the community needs to have done. And so as I listened to the reflections made by the previous speakers, all I could do is first appreciate the fact that this is in fact a very bittersweet moment for all of us, and that, you know, here we are, we ought to be more joyful. We ought to be celebrating the fact that there are not only 14 plus Black women running for office in various South Florida jurisdictions, right? And that there's a wealth. Look at the power of our community in terms of beginning to flex our political muscles to ensure that the quality of life for residents in our communities might be sustainably improved. But that's not what we're doing this evening, right? So as I'm listening to each of your comments, I can't help but feel the pain, the anger, the hurt, the frustration, the disbelief, that so many across this community, across this country, and across the globe have been feeling with respect to the recent events causing the death of George Floyd. But you know what's seared in my memory? The nonchalant nature, or the manner in which the officer just kneeled with his foot on someone's neck, hands in his pocket, looking as if he were just shooting the breeze, chillaxing, as if nothing was happening. So, and in fact, when I say this is sealed in my memory, that at both times it fuels my anger, but it also reminds me that with that memory, I need to be responsible for moving this anger to action. So thank you, and let this be the launch, the catalyst, the launch pad for collective action to move our communities forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gypsy, Miss Gypsy. Next will be Miss Narnique Pierre Grant. Take a minute to introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you, Naomi, for putting this together. Thank you so much, Marie, for getting having the foresight to put this together. I know that there's quite a bit of these town halls going on now, especially more so in our community, which I'm grateful for. It is bittersweet to be here today. However, I am also, my heart has joy that we are coming together and working to find solutions and find a way to make sure that this doesn't continue. As you can see from outside, everybody's tired. I know that I am. I have a son that every day he steps out of the house, I have literally anxiety and have to remind him on what he needs to do when he's out on the road so he can make it back home to me safe. So it's very, very difficult this time for us. I am running for school board of Broward County District 9 seat, and I believe that education also, from when the children are small, can make a big benefit. We have to do some sort of implicit bias in schools, in education. We also have to talk about racism in education. These things are not touched upon, they are just glazed over. So this dynamic panel is, I believe, is just a holistic view. And I think it would be greatly beneficial for us to come up with some ideas and solutions for our elected officials that we do have here on the panel, who are strong leaders in their own rights, and greatly appreciate that. And we just want to add on to that and make sure that we get this done and get this done correctly, and not have to deal with it again. And I do again appreciate the panelists, and I appreciate the host for allowing me to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Narnique Grant. Next, Ms. Nadia Assad. Take a minute to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again, Naomi Blemer, for the invitation. And thanks to everyone that took the time to be here with us this afternoon discussing something so important, which is the future of our community. My name is Nadia Assad, a candidate for Lauderhill Commission Seat 3. I'm also a mother of a 16-year-old son that goes back and forth from school. And looking at everything that's going on now, it is an important discussion. And I am so pleased and honored to be here, to be a part of that, to bring forth positive idea and light to the future of our community, what we're gonna do forward from now on to move forward in a better light. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Nadia Pierre. Next is Ms. Ketley Joachim, if you're with us. Okay, Ms. Ketley is no longer with us. So we move on. Thank you so much to everyone who's participating, including the 8 candidates for office and the mayor and commissioners who decided to join us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Now I will pass it on to Ms. Sandra St. Hilaire.
I believe all of the candidates and also the special guests already answered the question. So we're gonna move to Naomi for question number 2.
Thank you, Sandra. Question number 2. We know that what is going on in the world right now concerning Black people have long been there, has always been there, and they are just now being videotaped. And so the question that we have is, what are some of the systemic race issues that are currently plaguing our local communities, and how can we cure them? We will begin with Mayor Gilbert.
Hey, I mean, that's a very big question. There's a lot to focus on, a lot to talk about. One of the things that I want to point out is Amy Cooper. We're talking about Minnesota, and we should be, because Mr. Floyd's death was tragic. His murder was tragic. But what Amy Cooper did in New York City weaponized race in a way that happens every day. And that's really, really, really dangerous. She weaponized her race and her gender, and she weaponized his. She weaponized hers because she knew exactly who she was relative to him, and she weaponized his by telling him, hey, I'm gonna call and tell him that I'm being threatened by Black men. And she knew what that would do. And it's important because those are the type of things that we need to focus on. Look, that is going to, we can't cure people being hateful. We cannot cure racism. What we can do is find a way to remove it out of our systems, out of governance, how people respond, what's their implicit bias, what's their natural inclination. When you look at whether it's policing, whether it's banking, whether it's housing, if you look at how we responded to the global pandemic, if you went out all of your essential workers, it wasn't your lawyers and your doctors. They got to work from home. It was your nurses and your police officers and your firefighters and your fast food workers and your Walmart workers. Look, those things all have an implicit racial undertone because they speak to years of discrimination, years of racism, and years of inadequate education, years of poor health outcomes and not having access to good health systems. And these are all things that we can and should be dealing with as public officials. And so I know now we're talking about law enforcement and how police officers interact with the Black community. That is important. What's also important is the role that race plays in every other thing, because in every other thing, it is actually making a difference.
Thank you so very much, Mayor Gilbert. At this time, we will go to Mayor Messam with the same question. What are some of the systemic
Well, in
race
terms
issues?
of in terms of the systemic racial issues, it's so broad, so deep, so vast. You really don't even know where to start. But bringing it local here to South Florida, many of us, as South Florida has changed demographically, you see now more African Americans, Caribbean Americans being elected into office. And once we get elected into office, it is incumbent upon us to look at our policies, our laws, legacy policies, legacy laws that have existed for generations that allow the system to perpetuate the racism, the institutional racism. So we must, as elected officials, make sure that we look internally within our ordinances, our laws, to see what are those biases, what are those barriers that really impact the community, which is now becoming more Black and brown throughout South Florida. That is really where we must start. We must start specifically not only just with our police department to look at how our police officers are enforcing law in our community, the generational cultural biases. Many departments are still not reflective of the communities that they serve. President Obama's 21st century policing recommendations and the commission that he put forward, and the recommendations that came out of that commission stated that communities should, the police department should represent the demographics of their communities. As elected officials, we must remove policies, remove barriers so that our residents, our business community, our entrepreneurs can be able to achieve the American dream, especially with South Florida being, with so many immigrants. I'm a first generation American. My parents immigrated to this country. I was born here in Florida, and I benefit here in Florida and in the United States from a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of African Americans that march, that protest, that were lynched, that were hosed down, that were bitten by law enforcement dogs. And we all are the beneficiaries of that. Now we must take the baton and carry it forward and ensure that those who come behind us have even more of a clearer path. And I cannot neglect the influence and the contributions of our Caribbean brothers and sisters that assisted brothers here in the United States, assisted this nation. So we have a claim and a stake as well, especially our Haitian brothers who helped the United States become a free country, helping in the Revolutionary War, and other Caribbean Americans, or Caribbeans that helped in the Civil Rights struggle. So we have a legacy that we stand on. We have a legacy that we must, and an obligation that we must protect, so that the next generations can have even more of an opportunity that we all have been able to benefit from.
Thank you very much, Mayor Messam. At this time, we're going to go to one of our candidates with the same question, Mary Woodson.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Naomi. Thank you to everyone again. Basically, we are really, I can say from all the deaths that have happened previously, we all were upset. We are the senseless death of African-American or whatever the other races might have been. But this one, particularly the death of George Floyd, has opened our eyes to a lot of things that existed, but that we were taking as the status quo, per se. As a mother of one and a mother of millions, actually, because once you're a mother, you see every other son as your own. When we look at the disparities that exist among Blacks, looking at COVID that just happened, in Louisiana, 70% of African American were accounted for the deaths in COVID, which African American represented only 33% of the population. Do the math. And affordable housing. Do we have affordable housing for our African Americans? And when I'm talking about African Americans, I'm including all the other Black groups under that, because we all are living in the United States of America, and we all are American. I'm Haitian American, and we know how our Haitian American community feels when things like that are happening, because it's happening also in our backyard. When you look at housing, you look at education, Blacks are not faring as well as the other group. So when we look at the jail population, we're seeing how Blacks are the ones who are, Judge Fabi can attest to that. She's in the criminal justice system. Ronald is an attorney. When you look at the number of Blacks who are getting incarcerated as a result, sometimes they might not be incarcerated because they deserve to be incarcerated. We know something needs to happen. Something needs to be done. We have to ask for change. We know that there are problems in the police and some of the police department. We have some good cops, some good police officers. However, we need changes. We need changes to happen. When we look at the disparities that exist among us, we are not faring as well as we should, and we are dying in the hands of some of the police officers who don't value life as they should. So we need to do better. We need to work as a community. Yes, I agree with Mayor Messam. We have had African Americans who have given the blood and sweat in order for us to be where we are, and we are grateful for that. So this is the moment that we all need, because we know those disparities exist. So we need to, today is a conversation, and we need to take it a step further to come up with solutions. I am very grateful for what happened, because when we look at the number of Black, white, Hispanics, all of us came together to protest for the death of George Floyd. But it doesn't end there. It should not end there, because what's going to happen, we are going to go back as business as usual. So we need to continue to push it in order for us to see those changes that we need to see. As candidates who are aspiring to go to public office, we need to see what we can do at the local level, at the state level, at the national level, in order for us to eradicate some of those racism that exists in our community.
Thank you, Candidate Woodson. We're going to move to Candidate Sheila Phyllis McCormick.
If we're talking about systemic racism, the first place and the most important place to address it is definitely on the federal level. There's been, for the past few years, I want to say more than a decade, people who believe that the protections that were offered to us on Title V, Title VII, that these were enough, and that Black people were not discriminated against, colored people were not discriminated against. And for the last 10 years, as I was advocating in Congress for the disparities that we had in healthcare, I have physically seen people not bring to the floor policies that would address policing, and especially the subjective nature of policing. Now, everybody has to understand that policing does not have an external body that does hold it accountable. In every situation that we have in government, there is a need for checks and balances. There's policy out there that we've been trying to bring to the floor, but it has not come and no one's passed it. And so this moment right now actually gives us leverage to hold our elected officials accountable to make sure that now it does come to the floor. The second thing that we have to really focus on pushing is ensuring that everybody who's complicit is held accountable and they're actually investigated, because it's not just a police officer, it's everybody who, even the legislator is complicit. The attorneys are complicit. Even the paramedics who were there on the scene who did not check his pulse when they got there. First thing you do when you get to the scene is to take their vital signs. And that was not done, because at the end of the day, everybody knows what they're trying to do is to make sure that the state does not have repercussions. And that's what needs to change. We have to actually do an internal investigation of ourselves as a country, of ourselves as a political being. Who are we? And we're at that cusp right now where it's imperative that we do that. And that can only start with a real investigation auditing every police station, every police force to find out what's really going on. Because the truth is, there's always been an awful stench of racism in policing, in the judicial system. This is nothing new. This is how we were founded, but we never took the time out to actually do inventory to find out what we need to change when it comes to training, what we need to change when it comes to policies, even reporting, the internal mechanisms in the police department. Those, if they're good officers who report things, they're retaliated. And nobody says anything about that. The third prong that we have to work on is healthcare, especially when it comes to mental health. A lot of our officers are suffering from mental health issues, from consistently being put into situations where they're suffering from silently with trauma. That's never dealt with. We never deal with that part. And then on the flip side, if you look at our community, we don't have healthcare for ourselves. We're still deprived of that. We're still dying at a disproportionate rate. You know, the country was well aware that when we got COVID, we were dying, and they did nothing. They ignored it and went to another problem. This is where we can no longer allow it to go. Well, how is it? The last 10 years, I've been lobbying on this issue, the disparity when it comes to healthcare. Why are we not getting it? I've been doing healthcare for 20 years, and I can tell you, we can open up a mental health portal right now, which would be telehealth, and we have the money to do it in the whole nation. But why are we not doing it? It's because it's not important to the leaders who are there. So we have an opportunity to make it important, and we must focus on these things. Our children are watching. Our lives are at stake. Our husbands, our wives. This affects us as a whole, and we can't turn back and ignore it and say, oh, well, we can handle it another way. No, we have action steps. Let's do an internal investigation. Let's actually create another body that's going to regulate them, and let's open up that portal so we can start treating ourselves, especially our mental health.
Could not hear you now, you're on mute.
Thank you so very much, Candidate McCormick. At this time, we're going to ask the same question to Mayor Wagar.
Thank you. Listen, I concur with every sentiment that has been made previously. I mean, I think we all understand that systemic racism around is just, there's a bevy of issues that we could all go into for days and months and weeks. But what I would offer is this. Miami Shores Village is 89 years old. I am the first. There was one, I think, African-Dominican Republican gentleman who was on the council, but I'm the first African-American to have been elected in 89 years. And if you count Mr. Espero, that's 2 in 89 years in a community that is very diverse. I think that's shameful. I think it's sort of set up that way that we don't engage and we don't participate. Adriana here from North Bay Village, she's the first. I mean, we're still having first in 2020. You have Miss Gypsy Metaluz here, and she and I have enjoyed these conversations over the years. One of the things we need to do is band together to make sure that we get good candidates that come out like yourselves and put their name in the hat. Even where we're typically not represented, I think we should always take the chance, put our name out there and run for these elections. Civic engagement goes a long way. Me sitting up there helps to change the dialogue. It changes the complexion of the city. It means that more people are reaching out to me with questions and issues, whether they're from the Haitian community, the African-American community, the LGBTQ community. They're reaching out because they feel like they have an ally up there, unlike themselves, who has not been there before. So I think civic engagement is very important. I also would go on to say that, you know, the healthcare issue is huge. And that has already been spoken on, but I really just want to touch quickly on that civic engagement. If we don't get involved, our voices aren't heard. And I love grassroots level stuff, but let's get out there. And by the way, last thing I would say on that is when we run, we got to support each other. I mean, I know Miss Jackson came, and I know Miss Grant and I have chatted, Miss Metaluz, we've chatted, even if it's just a conversation. It's incumbent upon us to support each other so that we can help get messages out. We've got to participate. And unless we participate, we won't have a voice, and a voice that needs to be heard. So that would be how I would offer as to how we could change some of the systemic change within our communities.
Thank you so very much, Mayor Wagar. At this time, we're going to ask Kitli Joachim the same question. The question is, what are some of the systemic race issues that are currently plaguing local communities?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kitli Joachim. I'm a candidate for office commissioner in the city of North Miami Beach, who was having quite a few problems getting in. I've lived in Miami for quite a while, and we went through rioting with Arthur McDuffie years ago. I don't know if some of you remember what happened with the McDuffie situation, how these police officers were acquitted. And when I moved to the city of North Miami Beach, I needed to find a way to get involved and to make sure that we police our police officers. Being Haitian, the community knew that in Haiti, how the Haitian community is afraid of the police. So what they were not counting on was I was a different Haitian. I went right to the source and to the police department itself and started getting involved. What I did was that I attended the Citizens Police Academy in Miami-Dade County, because by watching and see what the police officers were doing when they were arresting people by putting their knee on their back, and the community was being outraged about that. And so I went to Miami-Dade Police Academy, 28-week course that they provide to citizens, and I'm sure they still provide it. So you can learn exactly how the police officers are supposed to behave when they are there. You go to the same training they go to. And in the city of North Miami Beach at that time, we didn't have that type of training. And because I went to the source, because someone went to the police department and told them that I said that the police department was corrupt, and I was not going to stand for it. I went, met with the police chief itself, and started getting involved. We have a group that is called Club Law and Order, where we meet with the police department monthly. We talk to them. We get them to get involved in our community. We end up with community policing. What I have found that is helpful for us is that this group, Club Law and Order, we make sure that we interact with the police department. They get to know the community. They get involved with the community, because a lot of our young men were afraid of the police department, were afraid of our police officers. And now because of that, we have interaction. We have the Police Athletic League in our city. We get involved. We make sure if something happened, we nip it at the bud. We go to the source. We don't just sit around and hide in our homes, because our lives and our children's lives depend on it. And these are one of the things that I would like to see happen in different communities in Miami-Dade County. That every certain areas have these type of police club law and order, where the residents meet with the police, where our young men interact with the police department, so they can explain to them what is happening, why they fear them, what is happening out there. And the police can explain also why they fear, because some of them fear for their lives, why they fear our young men. So it's that type of communication that is beginning to help us in the city of North Miami Beach. Because years ago, we had a shooting where a police officer thought this man that was in a wheelchair had a gun, and he clearly didn't have a gun. And that resulted in him losing his life. And so it has helped us in a way that by interacting with them, by getting to know the police chief, we have his cell phone number, with the majors, all of us interact together. So if something happened in my neighborhood, I'm gonna make sure I go to the source and hold the police department accountable, the police chief, You need to come to my area and explain what has happened. So far, because of that type of interaction, we've been able to get somewhere.
Thank you so very much, Kitley. We appreciate your response. At this time, we're going to move over to candidate Gypsy Metellus.
Fun. Are we responding to the same question, Ms. Naomi?
Yes, we are.
And so, as most of you have already stated, the systemic and structural policies that sort of conspire to continue to dehumanize us, to make us feel as if we don't count, that make us feel as if we don't belong in this country, that hold us back, and that continue to rear their ugly heads, and a number of gaps. And you all know about these gaps, right? We find them in education, we find them in healthcare, we find them in mental wellness, we find them in housing, we find them in business, we find them in opportunities, we find them in the environmental justice, right? And we also find them in wealth, right? And so this wealth gap that we talk about all the time, it is really one of the key challenges that I think our communities collectively need to just get on the same page and book about looking at how we address some of those issues and how we offer up policy options that help us to move beyond the point at which we're currently, right? And so when we begin talking about the policy options, I can weigh in a little bit more, but in terms of these gaps, in terms of these policies, we are impacted as Black people, whether you're Black and you happen to be of Haitian descent, or you're Black and you happen to be of Bahamian descent, or you're born in the United States, or you're Black from the continent. These policies are equal opportunity impactors, right? And so let us not forget that. And so as we go forth to identify the policy options that will lift up all of our communities, let's keep in mind that when it comes to police brutality and injustice and structural racism, Black racism, we are impacted in the very same ways. And so the policy options will need to look and feel the same way for most of us. Right? So let me put a semicolon right here to allow someone else to continue. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, candidate Metellus. At this time, we are going to go with Commissioner Jackson. Same question.
Thank you. I agree with most of what everybody has said up here. It's a loaded question, systematic racism. Yelling back to Mayor Wagar, one of the things we need to do is be involved. I'm a transplant here from Kansas, and I've been here 11 years. And one of the ways I was able to get involved in my community was by being on the boards. And that's where I got my start. That's where I got to meet the chief of police. I met the entire commission, the mayor, staff. And that's one of the ways we can, quote unquote, break the wheel is by getting involved. I think it's amazing we have this many women running. I think women of color, Black men running, to be represented and have a voice. And that's the way you break it. Having these conversations, taking it from the streets, to Village Hall, to your town hall, because that's where the change is going to come in. Being able to sit down with negotiations with police unions and things like that to help shape the world that we want to see. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. At this time, we are going to Senator Daphne Campbell.
Thank you for having me again, Naomi. And let me talk about some of the systematic race issues that are plaguing the local communities. There are police brutality, job inequality, gun violence, school inequality. The police continues to pester the Black youths, stopping them for no reason, searching them, planting illegal substances on them, falsifying reports because they are seen as a part of economics, because economics is what racism is. When they are shooting Black folks, It is because they know that blacks are powerless. They know if they shoot you, all you are going to do is march. They know you have no wealth and limited income. Therefore, you are a prime target, and it is sad. They falsifies reports to gain ranks and promotions and put innocent black youths behind bars, destroying their lives, giving them a record that prevents them from having a job or moving forward in life. The schools in the white neighborhoods are better equipped and have programs that the school in the black neighborhood do not have. They have the better teachers, better job opportunities after graduation than the black communities. Gun violence is in the rise, but it is among the camps more because they pull their gun and shoot any black person. Black people are afraid to walk or even sleep in their beds because of the police and gun violence. It is out of control. With training the police, I think that's what we need to do. The police requirements to join the force need to be revisited. To be a police officer does not require much, but being a citizen, being 21 and older, passing through the academy is not enough to be on the front lines dealing with the public. Some have no customer service, no people skill, no friendly approach. It is as if those were trained to believe the people are their enemies. When those graduate, they act as if they are above everyone and the people in the community is inferior to them. They need new requirements, and I said it last night to one of the show. I was a panelist, and I asked one of the chiefs, these police need more training, and she says they have a lot of training, but to me they need to be trained more how to treat people on the street, and some of them need accountability. They need to be accountable when they do something. I don't think it's fair for a police to be arrested after protests, after riots, after looting. No, the same time the man will say, I can't breathe. The same time they should arrest him and cuff him for him to not to be breathing as well. And it is unfair for the entire world to have a protest just for them to arrest the other three. And what is more sad, they don't even give him first degree, they give him third degree. But after a lot of protests, now they change everything. This is why I said, as a former state senator or state representative, and I'm running for state senate, if the District 35 give me opportunity to go back to Tallahassee, I will make sure I put in place a policy, a strict policy for police officers to be accountable for their act and to be stripped away for all their benefits once they find them guilty of such act, a violent act. As a mother, as a human being, it is unfair and it needs to stop. Enough is enough.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. We appreciate your response to that question. At this time, we're going to move to candidate Narnique Grant.
Thank you. Again, everybody said a lot in a mouthful, and I'm, really appreciating this conversation. One thing I like to point out is and I'm going to be very candid. White people train their children from young for civic duty, they get them prim and propped early. We need to start doing that in our community. We need to get our kids involved in civic duty. We need to let them teach them how to run for office or aspire to be an elected official. There's not enough of us on here. And that starts with education, and it starts from them when they're young. Again, I appreciate this panel because it gives us a holistic view as far as education goes. It's really, really important that we teach, that we put into curriculum and we fight to put into curriculum the real truth about racism, the real truth about slavery, the real truth about Black history. We don't have that there. And I think we need to make sure that that's something that is at the top of the agenda. Bottom line is the Black agenda needs to be the top of our agenda, period. I heard most of the the elected officials here are the first. I was even reading in the chat that Wayne Messam was the first Black mayor in Miramar. We cannot be in 2020 and we're all in the first of stages for everything. We have to be able to push our children and push our community to want more. You know, systematically, we've been trained and to accept less than. So the goal is to want more. Now we're in a path where we are, we've been thrust here because of what happened to George Floyd. And one of the main things that I haven't heard, and I've been to a couple of these town halls, is economic sustainment. Black people spend 10 times more than our white counterparts. We literally make the economy go round and round. If we decide today collectively to stop spending money in certain areas and certain locations, this whole economy will crumble. We need to start teaching our children and start teaching our community about our economic power. We have that. And that's something that I want to see more elected officials talk about. And especially we're becoming in Broward County, and I would venture to say for Miami-Dade as well, a majority counties. We run it. And we need to understand that we need to step into our power, and our power is economics, and we need to focus on that. We need to make sure that our communities get economically trained and learn how we can use this to make our platforms bigger. And I appreciate Ms. Wagar stating that we need to come together and support one another. When we're running for office, we all need to be putting all hands on deck. There's not that many of us. As we well have seen, there's so many firsts here. This can't be the norm for us. We have to be at the table, and we have to be on that playing field too.
Thank you so very much, Candidate Grant. At this time, we are going to go to Candidate Nadia Assad, and we will end this series of questions with Judge Phoebe Francois. Nadia?
Thanks again, Ms. Naomi Blemire. Word cannot begin to describe, for lack of better word, the rage that I felt watching that video of 4 men murdering that unarmed man. And the nonchalance of what he was doing it, even knowing that he was being videotaped, being recorded, make it even worse. And all this, I think, is because in his head, he knows that nothing's gonna happen to him. From so many others that have been victimized, that have been murdered, and little justice have been, done for them. So he knew that, no matter what he's doing, it doesn't matter. And it's like, whatever, I am killing a Black man, so what? Nothing's gonna happen to me. So therefore, right now, we having that issue, it's been like forever, like we can say forever. And I echo with everybody else what they have been saying about, we need the systemic change. But we need a true systemic and lasting changes. I said lasting changes, because how we do it, what I've been seeing in our community, something happened, somebody got murdered. We all here, we got the media, fired up, everybody's fired up, elected official fired up, and then next few days after that, everything dies off. Nobody's following up on what we're gonna be doing, what we need to do for now, following up with those families, following up with the communities to make sure that those things doesn't repeat themselves again. Enough is enough, like Senator Campbell said. We cannot keep doing it like that. We need to come up with reform. We need reforms. We need also what we call the task force report, like President Obama was saying. People are talking about the manifestation, the protests and everything else, how we do it and how we don't do it. Right now, like he said again, Obama said, it's not about and or either. It's a question of, yes, both of them are necessary. And if we stop doing what we're supposed to be doing, like protesting, bringing those reform, bringing those change that we need to do, nothing's gonna happen. We're gonna stay in the same stage. And it starts with us. It starts with us The many organizations that we have, the citizens that are in the communities, we need to stay engaged, get engaged. We have too many organizations for our community not to be educated about things that are important for our community. So it starts with us.
Thank you so very much, candidate Assad, for that response. For this final question, we have Judge Phoebe Francois.
Thank you, Naomi, for that question. I think that we've had systematic racism has always existed, and it's always going to continue to exist until we actually do something about it. I started at the Public Defender's Office in 1995. And I remember as a young attorney sitting in the courtroom, other people would come into the courtroom and they would mistake me for the secretary or for the probation officer. And I was dressed in a suit with my briefcase, and I think I looked very lawyerly, yet they didn't believe that I was a lawyer. So as Ms. Woodson stated earlier, pointed out, a large majority of our defendants that are in shackles in a courtroom are people of color. And back in 1995, when I first started with the Public Defender's Office, there were only 3 Black judges at that time. And when I was appointed in 2018, there were only 6, and that right before I was appointed, there were only 6 Black judges. So I think that when we say that people are complacent and they're complicit, I think we all are. We're complacent and we're complicit in all of this because we haven't done anything about it. We haven't done anything to affect any change. And until we have more people like us in every institution, including in the courtrooms and as lawyers and as judges, where things are not going to change. Someone asked me the other day, why is it that the law is different when applied to a police officer versus when it's applied to another person? But the problem is that the law is not different. The law is the same law that's being applied to the police officer as being applied to another person. The difference is the people that are applying the law. So if we don't have representation in the courtroom, we don't have judges that look like us, that are sensitive to our community's needs, that are hearing these cases, then we're not going to have good results, and we can't expect to have good results. So that's why it's so important that we actually, not only that we vote and make sure that we have the right people in office, and that goes, we're not just talking about our senators and our representatives and our commissioners and our mayors, but our judges and all of these people who are up for election. You got to make sure you vote, because, and not only do you have to vote, but when you get that subpoena in order to appear in court to be a juror, you got to make sure that you show up and you don't try to get out of it. Because so many of us, and I've seen it, so many of us, people of color, when they get to the jury room, they want to do anything and everything that they can do in order to get out of hearing a case. Problem is, though, the young man that's in the shackles, that's going to be tried for whatever those charges may be. That man could be your son, could be your brother, could be your cousin, it could be anybody. But if we don't want to sit on the jury and we don't want to hear those cases, then we have no voice. And we can't say this person, and it could be the officer that's being tried for a case. And if you're not on that jury, you don't have a voice. And if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. So I think when it comes to systematic racism, it's a matter of us changing how we do things, changing our views and opening our eyes and being proactive.
Wow, Judge Phoebe, you gave a mouthful. The laws are the same. The problem is the person who is there enforcing the law does not look like you and I. Thank you so very much. At this time, in the interest of time, we're going to pose a question. One elected official will be able to answer, and 3 candidates. Please, like popcorn, if that's your question, jump on so we can complete our town hall for tonight. At this time, we will pass it over to Attorney Surin.
Thank you, Ms. Blemire. Thank you so very much. You've been doing a good job so far. Everyone is very responsive to those questions. Recently, President Obama was on CNN indicating that some changes can be addressed at the local level in absence of the federal government. So for elected officials, I will be addressing this to Mayor Messam. What policy would you seek to implement in order to bring some necessary changes? What policy would you seek to implement to bring some necessary changes?
Well, thank you for the question. I recall back in December of 2014, shortly after the incident in Ferguson, which caused a lot of uproar in that community in Missouri. It was national news, and many residents called me at the time when I was a commissioner on what would stop an incident like that from Miramar being Ferguson. And when examining our police department, much like Ferguson, but not to exactly the degree, our police department did not reflect the demographics of our community. And Miramar being a very diverse community, that is something that I've always have fought to change. Fast forward now being mayor, as well as the many changes that have happened in our police department, we now have not only a Black police chief, the deputy police chief is a Panamanian American of African descent, and we in the command staff has an African American female that is on there. And our most recent recruiting classes reflect more now our community. So it starts there. And I'm proud to announce that yesterday I accepted the pledge from President Obama to mayors to examine our use of force in our police department's policies, to engage our community. I have a public safety council that will assist me in that examination, and we'll review the results. And where there needs to be reform, we'll be making those recommendations to the police chief as well as to the commission. So I'm starting there. As you have heard, and I'll conclude with this, many of my responses to these questions are not necessarily talking globally or comprehensively. I'm the mayor of a city. I impose policy. I am the system. If you're an elected official, you are the system. You can't sit here and talk like a lay resident as if you don't change policy. And for the candidates that are seeking office, if you're not willing to challenge the system, challenge your colleagues, challenge the state, challenge the county, don't run for office. Rescind your candidacy, because this is not for just a title. We may not always agree on issues, but we must be advocates for our community. Some of us have different styles, some of us have different techniques, but our community is depending on us. If we are not going to stand for them, who will? We can bask on being the first. We can celebrate breaking barriers. But at the end of the day, how are you going to serve? Will you serve in excellence so that you are not the last? It's cool to be the first, but you must serve in a way where the community has confidence in someone who represents the way you lead and the excellence that you exude, that they're willing to support the next generation. And that is what it's all about.
Thank you, Mayor. And the same question going to be addressed to some of the candidates. Instead of implementation, we're looking at recommendation, since you're not in a position yet to implement any policies. However, some of our candidates have already given a response to that question, including Daphne Campbell, Nanik Pierre Grant, and so forth. So let me address this question, the same questions. What policy would you seek to recommend in order to bring some necessary change? And I will address this first to Gypsy Metellus.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Attorney Surin. And so for me, what would be important are policies that reinforce hope, that reinforce that we are in this to protect and defend our communities. And so I would want to see, for example, the restoration of civilian investigative panels. The county used to have such an entity years ago. And I think, you know, sometimes we cut our noses to spite our faces. And so in a round of budget cuts, this particular entity was eliminated. I think it's time to restore it because it goes a long way to providing citizens with the confidence and the hope that they can weigh in and have input around certain issues that impact their lives. That's one. The second thing, I would absolutely want to look at where the county's purview around criminal justice reform begins and ends, because in addition to using that bully pulpit to advocate, to push back, as Mayor Messam just said, to really shake things up, to ensure that there can be new ways of viewing our people, new ways of viewing corrections and rehabilitation. But, you know, I'm a firm believer in engaging communities and dialogue and input, because that engagement generally results in really solid policy options. That engagement results in community buy-in, and that engagement results in policies that most people can live with. And so I think that would be, I think, an important tool, an important strategy, an important tactic in formulating policies that address some of these issues. So let me stop right there. And of course, finally, you know, I think ensuring that there are equity analyses to no matter the policy that's put before a county commission, that would be critical. You want to know how a policy would be equitable or not be so equitable to the communities that you represent, in particular brown and Black communities. And so I think it's a small tool, but it's an important tool because it helps to educate your colleagues, it helps to educate your community, and it helps to educate your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Metellus, for your response. For implementation, I want to go to Mayor Wagar. Can you please address some of the implementation you would find necessary for changes?
I think that, I mean, there's a number of things that you could be doing for as far as it relates to implementation. But I think one of the biggest things as it relates specifically to our officers, community oversight boards, right? You know, making sure that those are in place and they actually have some sort of say in an active role in policing the police. I think secondly, when you're looking at your community, I think it's very important to make sure that the makeup of the police of your police force accurately reflects as best you can the community for which you serve. So if you're dealing with whatever community you're dealing with, your police force should reflect your community. And when that happens, you have a little bit more trust, much more respect, and your community tends to get more involved in the process because it's someone that looks like you, particularly when young people are around. And we've all had to have these conversations with our children around police and the proper way to act, and et cetera, just to make it, you know, home. It's nice to have someone that you're talking to that looks like you and maybe has an understanding of you and your community. So I think those are a couple of things that are important. Of course, President Obama talks about the use of force and the different types of uses of force that should be banned. I mean, we need to be looking at our policies to make sure that chokeholds and being able to cut off one's air should not be a part of your police department's policy. I mean, there's policy considerations that need to be taken into consideration. And when you're bringing them before your elected body, you want to make sure you have the support of your community to bring those policies in so that you can push them through. I mean, it just helps that everybody's engaged and everybody's involved when you're making your points and getting your policies across. So those are three things that I think are important among a myriad of others, but those are the top three I would hit on for the sake of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so very much. Mayor Gilbert leads a city that is predominantly Black. There's got to be some policy changes that you can implement to make the life of Black people easier in dealing with law enforcement. Mayor Gilbert?
Actually, it's not what I can implement, it's what I have implemented. When I became mayor, we were at about, I think it was between 25 and 30% of our officers were actually Black. What I said was we were going to hire kids from our community, send them to the police academy and make them police officers. Now our police department is over 50% Black. Now only 13% of all law enforcement in the country are Black. So we're extraordinarily outpacing the country when it comes to that. All of my officers have body cams. That was before the state mandated it. All of my officers have community policing training. All of my officers have implicit bias training. And they all have it with the understanding that look, I can't guarantee that people won't do anything bad. That's beyond me. What I can guarantee is that we will have systems in place that will punish it accordingly. That's what I can guarantee. And I do that by having a Black police chief. She's a woman. A Black assistant police chief. He's a man. Her entire command staff are African Americans or Black. My city manager is Black. My 2 assistant city managers are Black. My department heads, look, we're just going to have excellence in Miami Gardens. And I believe that excellence can look like us. We are unapologetically Black in Miami Gardens. I don't run away from that. This is who I am. This is who we are. I was born and raised in this community. And so some things are just going to be unacceptable. And if we can do one thing, do this, make it unacceptable. In the literal sense of the word, we will not accept this behavior. I can't control what you do. I can control when you get a check. So we're going to have policies in place, because I'm a policymaker, that says if you do this, you can't work here. So if you want to work here, then you can't do this. It is beyond any of our capacity to remove the evil from a man's mind and his heart. Literally, it is beyond our capacity. Time might do it, being educated about who we are might do it, but we can't do it. What we can do is be a consequence. And that's what we become in Miami Gardens. So, and I agree with Wayne Messam, the mayor is absolutely right. When you are sitting in the seat of power, what did you get there for? I get there to be a kid who grew up in Miami Gardens, who went to FAMU, who caught the bus and the metro rail to law school. I got there to bring my perspective to the seat. And my perspective said, yeah, if I can be something extraordinary, every kid in Miami Gardens can. If we're going to form a police force, initially when they formed it in 2008, they recruited people from all across the country. Our new policy is not from across the country, just from around the corner. That's where we get our police officers. That's our version of community policing. I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Mayor, for your response to the questions. Since we're dealing with the people in the seat of power, we may as well give Ms. Jackson the opportunity to implement, to tell us some changes she's willing and able to implement in her jurisdiction. Ms. Jackson?
Well, thank you. Thank you again for the question. One of the things that about my community is we're 6% Black here. So with that said, one of the things we need to look at is most likely training and how are we doing bias training, things like that, racial sensitivity that our officers are getting. And going back to an earlier statement, making sure that our officers are getting their mental health checked on. We're seeing people out here on the streets dealing with people in their lowest moment. Not with the riots, but I'm just saying in general, that's generally when police come in at somebody's lowest moment. And how are we nourishing these people in their minds to go back out and effectively deal with the community? So those are some of the things I'm looking to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your answer again. Some of you are not seeking a seat, but you're not in power yet. And as recommendation for policy change, Ms. Woodson, what policy would you recommend if you when you make it to Tallahassee?
Thank you, Attorney Serene, for this question. There's no doubt that we all are angry, we all are fed up, we all are upset. And tell you the truth, I'm not just upset, I'm broken down by what happened recently in the death. We need to make sure that we really look at some of those things that are going on, in the sense that Officer Chauvin was disciplined, had 18 complaints. He was with the Minneapolis Police Department for more than 18 years. He had 18 complaints against him. That should not have been the case for someone with 18 complaints and a police force for you to be allowed to go and commit a murder. That should have been addressed from the front end as to, after so many complaints, something is done with this police officer. We know there's a major issue with mental health. We're seeing it in our own community, and it's no different in the police force. I would make sure that we have legislation to address police officers having so many complaints. By a certain number of complaints, something needs to happen. Either you need to be removed from the force or sent to EAP to get mental health counseling or whatever help that you have need. We have to make it possible for that to happen. Otherwise, we would be leaving the same problem that we are leaving. Comprehensive police reform is definitely needed. We have some good police officers. What would we do without having police officers in our street? But we have to be aware of the fact that we have some bad apples that we need to get rid of. So we need laws, we need standards, we need policies to address those issues. And I would make sure when I get to Tallahassee, I work with my colleagues and make sure that we pass legislation to address this. Because we need to make sure that we have policies that can balance the protection of police with the safety of our citizens. So this is one thing that I would do.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Woodson. Now, that concludes my inquiries. I would pass it to Mr. Anthony Bonamy for further questions.
Thank you, Attorney Serene. Earlier today, when I was actually advertising and promoting this event to my friends, I got a text message from a very good friend of mine who's also a police officer. He sent me this text message, and I wanted to read it and get some reactions from some of the panelists and some of the elected officials. His message goes on like this. It's really brief, but I just want to get your reaction to what he said. He said, "Good morning, brother. You can't police your own community if you are not a police to do so. Become the police officer, become the prosecutors. We must encourage our sons, daughters, sisters, and brothers to join the movement and to become the voice we need desperately. Crying and whining, protesting, body cams are not enough. We have been there, we've seen that. Crying, protesting, and becoming emotional for years, and nothing has changed. We need our people to become a reflection of our community. We must become police officers, prosecutors, and judge. We must become our own voice. We definitely need change, and we need that change now. We can't continue with this complacency by failing to vote and then later on realizing someone not in our best interest won. I know we are all tired of voting, even our young people, but we must continue to vote and hold our politicians accountable. We cannot elect politicians that continue to say, I understand or I hear you, and do nothing. We need accountability. We need politicians in office that are just as tired as we are and are prepared to take action. The system can no longer mirror itself. The system must become a reflection of our community." This was a message sent by a police officer friend of mine. I'm not going to mention which city he works for or his rank, but he mentioned this because he wanted to kind of get our entire collective, basically bring us together to see what we can truly do for the police department. Because from the inside looking out, what he sees is that there's a lot of platitudes given by politicians, but when it's time for them to actually change it, or change the police force or make that impact, like Oliver Gilbert just mentioned, is not done. So I wanted to give a few minutes to Ms. Sheila McCormick, and I don't know if Mayor Oliver Gilbert would mind touching on that, and Mayor Messam as well. So we'll start with Ms. Sheila.
Thank you, Anthony. I first wanted to address something that's hidden beneath that comment. There's somewhere underneath there where this person feels like we deserve some part of it. We have to realize that being born in America, we automatically deserve to be protected, not discriminated, and not beaten down just because we're born here. That has to be a universal understanding. Second of all, just because we have more people who look like us in these positions does not overcome the culture, which is inherent. So now you have people who look like us, who are in these departments, who have to submit to that culture of institutional racism. And when they go to report it, that internal process is retaliating against them. So we have to be clear about that. And so if we're really gonna make change happen, it does come from our elected officials enforcing what they say they're gonna enforce. One of the biggest things that I've noticed is that congressionally, a lot of these congressional leaders do not write policy. It's lobbyists and advocates like me who write the policy, and we ask them to push that policy. A lot of them are afraid of the Fraternal Order of Police. That's one of the #1 biggest lobbying groups that are out there, and they're afraid of retaliation. They're not taking it to the fore. So if we're actually going to see some kind of real movement, yes, it's going to take us getting more people voting, because that incentivizes politicians. But then again, it's going to take us having new politicians, because we've given them chances over and over again. If you haven't taken this bill to the floor in 28 years, you ain't taking it. You're not taking it to the floor then. If we've been knocking on your door, flying over there, telling you our kids are dying, and our kids look like you, and you haven't done it, you're not gonna do it now. And I'm not gonna pretend that you're gonna do it and ask you over and over. And at the end of the day, that's why I decided to run. I'm tired of begging. There's no reason that we're begging that our children survive. No, we've come to a point where enough is enough. So if you haven't done it, you need to leave. You need to be out, because this is not a today issue. So if you haven't done it in the past, you need to leave. And we have to address that culture. That culture being addressed is going to come from the top down. And you didn't ask me this question, but I'll answer it. One of the biggest things we have to do is an internal audit. It has to be federally done. If you work for any federal organization, they do internal audits, and you have to meet the requirements. We need to shift that over and do it with police departments. If we do an internal audit and we see that you're not up to grade or up to standard, you need to go through an implementation improvement program. And that's just where we have to be. And let's not forget, these institutions, some of them were founded on racism. You know, they became police officers back then to police us. You know, the perpetuation of us being evil and deserving what comes to us, it's there, and we can't ignore it. So I do believe we need to have more people who look like us, but in that, we need to overcome that culture, and that's only going to be through policy, which is federal policy, so it can be unified and not put the burden on mayors, on governors. This is ridiculous. Congress must take a stand, and so does the president.
Thank you, Sheila. Mayor Oliver Gilbert, you touched on this specifically. I heard that in your message. I want you to touch on it.
Absolutely, and obviously I agree on. I agree that we should be hiring police officers from our community, because that's what I'm doing. So it's actually a policy that I wrote. I agree that, but let me just say this: we're going to hire police officers from our community. That in no way relieves people who are not from our community from the professional standards that they are trained through in the police academy. I want to be clear, because there's never going to be a situation where a police force is going to be all Black, and our Black officers are going to work in white communities. The truth is that we have professional law enforcement now. They are to conduct themselves as professionals. If they don't, they need to have a consequence for that. We pay them like professionals. They need to behave like professionals. You know, the previous speaker, she said something, and I want to expand on it. She said, you know, our rights because we're born here. No, it's not right. Our rights because we're born here. It's our rights because we are here. Our civil rights are modeled on human rights. You have a human right not to have a knee in the back of your neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds until you are dead. That is a human right. It is a human right violation for him to do that. So sometimes we implicitly try to build excuses in for evil behavior. So, and when I'm talking to my friends and they're talking like, hey, you know, this guy's a jerk. No, this guy's a jerk. This guy's a murderer. He's not a jerk. He's a murderer. He's not wrong, he is evil. And he's not alone, he's a part of a system. And so to the extent that you can affect that system, I think you do. And I think that she's right. We do it through policy. And so I spent my time as mayor trying to do that through policy, in how we spend money, where we spend money, who we hire, who we empower, understanding that it will never be perfect, but also understanding that I needed to have receipts, not for anybody else, but from my perspective, because I gave up, a pretty lucrative law career to do this. I need to know that I actually made a difference. And so if you're going to serve, for all the candidates on here, serve to make a difference. Serve to make a difference. Look, I've done some popular things and some unpopular things. And this is, I guess, I have to get off this call and get on another one. This is my advice to you. Whether it's popular, unpopular, be able to justify what you're going, have a good reason, and serve to make a difference. If you can explain it to voters and you can tell them what your thought process was, they rock with you. They do. But if you're just doing it because it's politically fancy to do it, or because someone else did, or because it's trending on Instagram and Twitter, that leadership by trends isn't actually leadership. It's something completely else. Just satisfy your soul in that respect, and it works out. Thank you all for the opportunity to be on. I have to hop on something else. I really appreciate y'all giving me the chance to come on here and speak with y'all. See y'all out there.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Mayor Messam, do you mind taking it away? And then Commissioner Jackson.
I just want to get back to can you repeat the original question?
The question was, the officer stated that he believed that we should be more proactive in how we, instead of simply marching and protesting, he believed that we should try to get the police officers to reflect the community in which they protect and serve. So I wanted to get your feedback. Is that the sentiments that you share, or do you feel that there's another way we can go about it? How do you feel about that situation?
Well, it's a combination of many factors. It really depends on your specific community. As it relates to police forces, that jurisdiction falls within the local municipality or that county or that for that sheriff's department. In the city of Miramar, the police chief is hired by our city manager, and the city commission hires the city manager. So it really boils down, like I've said before, as well as Mayor Gilbert, it really boils down to the policy. When we are elected as elected officials, it is incumbent upon us to change the policies. The policies then gives the enforcement to change a culture. Every city is different. Every town is different, especially in changing demographics. Demographics of a community change more rapidly than the institutional members of police departments. You have officers that have been there for 20 years, 30 years, 15, 20 years, and it is a system, and it takes time to change. So when you start with the policy, then it drills down. They are protected by collective bargaining agreements. They are protected by a strong lobbying effort. These are just some of the realities. But when you step into this role as an elected official with the intent of changing policy, you have to realize that you are going to be attacked. You will be attacked. When I was running for president, when I said that good cops need to speak up when bad cops do bad things, if you could only imagine the amount of hate mail, hate email, hate social media messages that I received because I simply said good cops need to stand up when bad cops do bad things. A rational person would say that is a non-threatening comment to make. But when those who don't want change see that you are in a position to implement change, they will do the things that they know they need to do to attack you. So if you're not willing to be under that type of pressure, to be under that type of scrutiny, then you may want to reconsider what you are running for. And for those who may be serving in other roles, I mean, we have positions like state attorneys. These are very important positions in our community because they determine the enforcement and prosecution of laws that are being broken. So when we have individuals who represent or look like us or represent our causes, we need to really drill down and scrutinize and support those individuals who will bring a fair measure to every situation. So it is incumbent upon us to really think about our power. We must understand that if we don't do it, who will? And if you're just holding a seat, please get up out of that seat and let someone else who will implement change occupy that seat. So I encourage everyone who is running for office to just represent who you are. Represent what you will bring to the table. Stay away from negative politics. Talk about what you will do to enhance the community, to bring forward the community. I will be an ally to anyone that sincerely wants to improve the community, because it's a lot of folks out there. It's really all about them. It's really all about them, and it is not about the community. So do not be hoodwinked. They will smile, they will laugh, but it's really about themselves. So, and you got to be willing to go against the grain. You have to be willing to be the only person to stand up and speak your truth that represents the community. So good luck to you all. It was a pleasure being a part of this dynamic forum, and please invite me anytime.
Thank you, Mayor Messam. Next and final question, let's go to you, Commissioner Jackson, and then I'll head it out to Sandra. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Anthony. And it goes back to your community. North Bay Village, we teeter under 10,000 people. To our east, we have Miami Beach. To the west, we have Miami. One of the things that's been done here is community policing. It's very important. And if that's not happening in your community, it needs to happen. We have police on bikes. There's different events that the police hold. I believe this evening they were just out congratulating the graduates of 2020. I mean, so it's a lot of different things that you do to get the message across that the police are involved in the city. They see them right around, they see them on their bikes, they're accessible, and a lot of our officers have been here over 10 years, 15 years, so they know the community, they know the players here, and that helps. Having your neighborhood watch, it's big here. That's how you get involved in the community. That's how you get to know the officers, and that's how the officers get to know who's in the community too. And it helps with that bridge. Thank you. It was a great conversation. I wish each and every candidate well. It's not easy, but somebody has to fight the good fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Jackson. Next, we'll go back to Sandra St. Hilaire.
Hi, everyone. So we've reached the end of the community town hall. As we move to closing remarks, I want everyone to remember that this is about the community. It's about the pain that we're feeling, especially for myself, who's probably the youngest person on here. I know a lot of us are frustrated. We're tired. We're going to put up a fight. And so in the closing remarks, I want all of you guys to address the youth and tell us how to move forward, because you've seen this before. You've seen it with Trayvon Martin. You've seen it with Ahmaud Arbery. You've seen this before, year after year, 40 years with someone else who was in Miami. We've seen this before, and we're tired, and we need it to end. So in your closing remarks, you have 1 minute. Please address the youth, because we need guidance of how to move forward, and we don't want to do this anymore past 2020. We're going to start with Commissioner Jackson.
Sorry, thank you. To address the youth, one, I've never seen anything like this before. The earliest memory I have of seeing anything close to this was Rodney King, 1992, I believe. I was in, I want to say junior high. And that was hard. He did get to walk away from that. What we just witnessed last week, I'm still very numb about that. It's very hard. I have a father, I have uncles, I have cousins, and I would not want to see them come to that type of demise. For the youth, Now is the time, like I said, to get involved in your boards. So now is the time to know your local. Who are your local leaders? A lot of you do not know that. Everybody thinks if they vote for the president, that's the end all, and it really has very limited impact on your life. You need to know your school board members. You need to know who your mayor is, who your commissioner is, who's representing you, who's your state representative, who's your state senator. I challenge you all to figure those things out and to contact those people. See if you can intern. See if there's different avenues to help you to get to college, different things you need to do, and get recommendation letters. But right now, the thing you need to do is to find out who your local leaders are. Again, thank you. God bless us all, and we'll make it through this.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Next, we move on to Mayor Wagar.
Thank you. Listen, thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to get straight to the youth because I think that's the movement that's going to move us along on this. I would like to encourage you not to be discouraged. A lot of people were here before you to get you here in the first place. You've seen it done in the 60s. It wasn't me, but people have been here before doing this. Don't get discouraged. Stay encouraged. Stay involved. Get your word out there and hopefully make it be a multicultural approach to it. We have to have allies in order to move this needle forward. We've tried to do it ourselves. We've gotten this far, moved the needle this much. Let's bring in some allies, stay engaged and educated on the issues. Once you know what the issue is, research the issue, make sure you know the issue from A to B. And not only just get engaged like Councilwoman Jackson said, but also reach out, do letter writing campaigns, right? Reach out to your state elected officials, your federal elected officials, and obviously your local officials, but don't stop. Don't let somebody tell you you can't go out and have a vigil because there might be looting. Keep going. Keep your head up, keep your shoulders back, and reach out, find a mentor, and just keep moving the ball forward. We'll all be here to help you, but don't be discouraged because we are going to be resting on your shoulders in the future, and we are here to push you along. But stay engaged, get educated, and keep pushing. And I really have appreciated this with everyone this evening. We're all in this together. So thank you for having us tonight, but keep the fight going. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're gonna have Narnique Pierre Grant. 1 minute, closing remarks, please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I want to thank the panel and all who came in to watch this evening. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Naomi and Ms. Woodson, for putting this together. Anthony and Sandra, you guys have been awesome. And Mr. Sturin, I cannot forget you, sir. For the young people, I just want to say, listen, this is a time where you guys, I feel like this young group are the most technological advanced group I've ever seen. Use your powers for good and make it where you take this knowledge that you all have that doesn't necessarily come from school, but just the way you guys adapt to that, you can use this and you can make this a stance for you. You can use this as your platform. And look to your elders. It's always great to sit down and sit next to an elder and learn. And mesh those two together. We are in this together. You're always gonna have us. We're always gonna have your back. But we want you to take that foot, make that step forward, and we'll be right behind you. Like the mayor said, you're not by yourself and do not be discouraged, but we're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre Grant. Next, we'll move on to Senator Daphne Campbell. 1 minute, please.
Well, first, let me say thank you again for inviting me to this panel. And all the panelists are great. And thank you, Naomi and Ms. Woodson, for even initiate this. Let me say something. While I was in the office, I created a youth task force. Once you have the youth involved in everything you're doing, especially now, the youth scared of the police department. So what they need, and they mistrust them. To get the trust back with them is to get interacted with them. So the youth, we have to keep encouraging them and be always be there for them, coaching them, and make sure the youth involved in everything the community is doing, especially the programs. If you give food giveaway, book bags, whatever program you have, you get them involved with you. And not only that, the youth are the future for tomorrow. We have to pass the torch to them. So all the youth out there, be blessed, be encouraged, and I'm there for you.
Thank you, Senator Daphne Campbell. Next, we have candidate Nadia Assad. 1 minute, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Miss Naomi, and everybody else that made that possible for us to have that discussion this evening. To the youth, the only thing that I'm gonna be saying is to be encouraged. Don't give up. Stay involved in your community. I know sometimes we don't have time. We have work, we got school. Some of us work 2 jobs. But if you guys make groups together, you put a group together, designate one person that should go to the city hall meetings so you guys can know what's going on in your community. Get involved in the policing community activity that they're doing, like the Police Citizen Academy, that can give you a lot of information as far as how they operate, how you can collaborate with them, and then find a way to get involved in the community. Third of all, the most important thing, get educated in everything. It's not only going to school and get your degree and everything else, but get educated about the resources that you have available in the community so you can get more education, get educated in everything that's going on, from voters registration, helping on that one as well. The census, help on those. Involvement, that's what's gonna bring us furthermore. So please stay engaged and don't get discouraged. We're gonna go ahead and keep on fighting the good fight. Together we can. Nadia Assad for Lauderdale Hill Commission Seat 3. Thanks again, you guys.
Thank you so much, Ms. Assad. Next, we'll move on to Judge Phoebe Francois. 1 minute, please.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel. This was a great conversation, and I really enjoyed being part of this panel. What I would say to the youth is to continue to engage, get involved, and to go out and vote. And if you can't vote, then make sure the people in your family are voting, because it's very important that we have representation in every institution, in every aspect of our government, in order for us to really to have meaningful change. And I also would ask you each to show kindness, concern, and compassion to each other. And that's going to go a long way in getting our community back to where it should be. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Judge Francois. Next, we have Ms. Kitley Chapin, please.
Good evening again, everyone. Thank you, Naomi, for allowing me to be part of this panel. Would like to thank you and all the panelists here this evening. As a grandmother of 2 young men who at times is very afraid for them, speaking to you all, young people, young men, young women, if you are the age where you can vote, I need for you to go out there and register to vote. And I need for you to tell all your friends, because most of you are in part of the social media. You need to go and vote. Vote every single election and become a super voter. For the youth of North Miami Beach, my number is 786-252-2479. We have a lot of vacancies and a lot of our boards that we need you to get involved. If you need more information, please feel free to call me. I'm here for you to help you, direct you, show you the path of what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Ms. Gypsy Metellus.
Thank you so much. And so a great big thank you to the organizers, to my fellow panelists, and to our viewers. Thank you for sharing in this special forum with us. So I want to say, first of all, that I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that I'm seeing emerging a really multi-ethnic, multiracial coalition of young people who have taken up the mantle. And for me, that is a sign of great hope. I want to remind the youth that it is their time. It is your time. It is your time to pick up the mantle of leadership, to pick up the baton, to keep fighting such that we can achieve the results that we've all dreamt of. And I want you to remember the history of the past social movements before you, right? The lessons of history from social movements that we've seen from the civil rights movement in the 64 year, the great student movement in 1968. We've seen movements that continued to demand the liberation of Nelson Mandela, right up to Black Lives Matter. So all of these movements have common threads, and those common threads are conviction, remaining committed, remaining focused, working on self-care, pursuing alliances, broadening your alliances such that you can then achieve the sustainable results that you hope for that will bring the transformational change that our communities deserves. And so I say, hang in there. Yes, we're all in this together, and looking forward to your support of my campaign, County Commission District 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know Ms. Woodson is looking, where am I gonna go? You're gonna get more than 1 minute for sure. So right now we're gonna close the closing remark with Ms. Sheffylus McCormick.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having us tonight, especially Marie Woodson and Naomi. The message that I would give the young people is that this is the really great moment for them to really be active. And if you are or see yourself as an influencer in any which way, this is where the time where you can leverage yourself and the community. Leverage yourself first into voting, especially in primaries. A lot of people don't know there's an election coming up August 18th, but you must be voting in primaries. If you want to run for office and you want to break through that barrier, that primary election is what's going to do it. The second thing that I would advise is that for the youth to start becoming aware of the issues. You have to really understand the issues, really research it, and understand the parameters of the law, because a lot of the solutions that we're looking for are actually going to come from young people. They are not tainted. They don't think things should be the same, and they actually have great ideas. So once you can actually start putting forth that legislation, writing those policies, people are looking for that. They're looking for solutions, and it's really going to come from this generation that's out there. But we just have to leverage that energy into actually creating change. And that comes through legislation and policy, that comes through voting, and that comes through voting for candidates that represent you. And that vote first comes in the primary.
Thank you, Ms. Sheffylus McCormick. I want to thank Ms. Marie Woodson for putting this forum together. It was necessary, and I will move on to Ms. Naomi Bleumier.
Thank you so very much for everyone who tuned in, whether you were tuned in via the Zoom, whether you are on Facebook or on our particular or any other particular page. We really, truly appreciate your attention to this town hall to really discuss where we are as a people and what possible solutions we can bring to the table. At this time, I would like to thank those that have participated in this town hall today, beginning with Senator Daphne Campbell, who's running for Florida State Senate District 35, Judge Phoebe Francois, who is running for re-election, Broward County Judge Group 27, Sheila Sheffylus McCormick, who is running for U.S. Representative District 20, Gypsy Metalis, who is running for Miami-Dade County Commission District 3, Narnique Pierre Grant, who is running for Broward County School Board, seat 9, Nadia Hassad, who is running for Lauderhill Commission, seat 3, and Kitli Joachim, who is running for North Miami Beach Commissioner, Group 3. To the honorable mayors that joined us tonight, thank you so very much for your yes. Mayor Oliver Gilbert of Miami Gardens, Mayor Wayne Messam of the city of Miramar, Mayor Crystal Wagar from the village of Miami Shores. Last but not least, Commissioner Andrea Jackson for the North Bay Village. Again, guys, thank you so very much. Thank you to our host, Mr. Anthony Bonami. Thank you to Attorney Ron Surin, and thank you to Sandra Saint-Hilaire. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication to our community. Last but not least, we understand in order for us to put this together, it was not just my efforts, but it was a community effort. So we want to give thanks to Mr. Frankie Jean from Skylight Films. And we also want to give thanks to Guylaine Berry Sakpase Media. These are people that we called upon to make this happen, and they were present. Thank you so very much. Again, this was our Haitian-American town hall to discuss the state of our nation and the possible solutions that we can put together. Again, as I opened, I stated that we need bold leadership. We need leaders that are thinkers, and we need leaders that can go with the time and that will be present. And at this time, the last voice that you will hear will be of candidate Marie Woodson, who brought this idea to me and allowed me to make it what you see here today. Marie Woodson.
Thank you so much, Naomi. And as you can see, I chose the best person. When I called Gypsy and say, hey, Gypsy, this is an idea that I had that I wanted to bring all of us Haitian-American women who are running for office at this time. We need to make a statement. We need to have a conversation in order for this to happen. And Gypsy and I, we were talking, and Gypsy said, well, Naomi really did the last one in the sense she was a moderator for the last one that we did. So we both felt it was good to get Naomi to do this. So Naomi, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, because it took us, I believe, 3 days to put this together. So it was like, just like this. And you brought a great team with you, Attorney Surin, who is a very good friend of mine, who always responds to the call whenever he's needed. And of course, Sandra Saint-Hilaire, who is a little firecracker, youth, actually a young woman who is so powerful. I'm telling you, I take my hats off to her. She's a young woman that a lot of other young women could look up to. Thank you for what you do. And of course, Anthony Bonami, who is a powerhouse, I would say. He came and really did his thing. We appreciate you. We appreciate your contribution. And to the panelists, this is a group of candidates who really that I admire, because as a candidate, it's not easy, but we all have something to bring to the table. You all have a lot of strength. We all have a lot to contribute. And I hope each and every one of you can take a young man or woman, take some youth with you, because it's all about mentoring. It's all about exposure. And I believe in that. As the immediate past chair of the Commission for Women, I had an obligation. My obligation was to empower young people, young men and women, because we have to pass the baton to them. We have to make sure that they're ready to go to the next level. And tell you the truth, I'm hopeful with what I see, because they are very engaged. If you look at how many of those young men and women who have come out during this time, this hard time that we're going through, they are out there, black, white, brown, they all out there, which is a good thing. Out of all this nightmare that we're going through, it's a good thing that is bringing all of us together. But let's not keep the conversation right here. I hope this is just the beginning of our conversation, because usually when something happens, everybody is excited, everybody's upset, we start the conversation, and then it ends right there. No, I have already spoken about certain ideas. We're gonna keep this going, we're gonna keep the fire burning, and we're gonna take, whether state, local, or federal, we're gonna take them by storm and come to the table and create our own table actually, because sometimes you can be at the table, but if you're not making a difference, you don't need to be there. So we are going to create our own table in order to continue making a difference. And let's take our young men and women with us, because they have a lot to contribute. When you look at all these things that they're going through right now, even in the school system, I'm even going even younger than that, in the school system, you have one counselor per 500 kids. Look what we're going through. Mental health is a major issue for our young men and women. So we need to make sure that we provide them with the resources that they need in order for them to be successful and take it on for tomorrow. Together, we can do this. To our young men and women, we hear you, we are with you, and we are for you. Together, we will make it happen and make a difference. Thank you so much. You have a great night. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the fire burning and the memory of George Floyd. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our Haitian American Community Town Hall for this evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night and good luck to all these powerful women out there.